have a personal friend. Charania here with us on SportsCenter AM. His busy week continues here in Bristol ahead of the NBA trade deadline. And now James Harden is a name that has emerged as a focal point around the league. What's the latest there with the Clippers and the beard?
Randy, Gary, this was as stunning as so far as it gets this trade deadline, because the Clippers had just won 16 of 20 games going into last night's contest. And now the Clippers and James Harden on the eve of the trade deadline are working together to find a deal for him out of LA. He's been great for them all year, healthy, durable, productive. And the Cleveland Cavaliers have emerged as a serious suitor with interest in him. And this was all made possible because Harden has a mutual option for next season, a $13 million partial guarantee. And that gave both sides the ability to sit down over the last few days and see where is his long-term future in LA. He wants to be somewhere where he's going to be there for multiple years after this year. That was not promised for him in LA. And he wants to compete for a championship, which is something we've heard a lot with James Harden when he went to Brooklyn, when he went to Philly, and then he went again to the Clippers. So he's looking at the Cavaliers as potentially a better opportunity to make it to the finals out east. One biggest key here with James Harden, he has a no-trade clause and all this. So he's going to have a lot of dictation over his future at the deadline.
Okay. I'm glad that you brought and broke down the reason behind that, because you mentioned it. He's second on the team in scoring, 25 points per game, and the Clippers have been one of the hottest teams in the league since about mid-December. That is super interesting. Let's say in the Eastern Conference, if that's where James Harden, in fact, is going, it's still Giannis. It's still the Bucks continuing to be the center of this deadline. Where are talks headed to this point, about 48 hours out from the deadline?
So the Bucks have been engaging with teams. They've been making counter proposals. And right now they're at the stage where they're sifting through the aggressive offers that they've gotten. And teams interested in Giannis that are making these aggressive pushes, like Miami, New York, Golden State, and Minnesota, they're waiting for Milwaukee to really get to the point where they're on the brink, where you're really making these counter offers like we're a piece or two or three away, and let's potentially get this deal done. And so these conversations, I think, will continue as we get closer to Wednesday and Thursday. The Bucks are at a tipping point, though. There's a conflict. They're in a position now where they're playing more and more for a draft pick the second half of the season. Giannis wants to play for a championship. He wants to play in the second half of the year. So there's a conflict of agendas with where both of these sides are going. They're now 11 games under 500. They've plummeted in the Eastern Conference. And so he wants and is ready for his exit, whether it's now or in the offseason.
Very quickly, what do the Bucks expect to get back for Giannis?
Their price point throughout all this has been a young blue chip player and a surplus of draft picks. The reality is the Warriors have a pick-heavy offer. The Timberwolves have a player-centric offer. And then Miami and New York is somewhere in between both of those. Some players, some picks.
Got it.
So Milwaukee has to choose here. Do they want to go down one of these paths, or do you kick this to the offseason when, as I said, and I've been saying, Giannis will have 1 year left on his deal, and that'll give him a little bit more power, a little bit more say-so in terms of saying, listen, I only want to go here or here, and that could dilute the value for Milwaukee in the offseason.
But there could be more potential suitors in that offer. Charania, it's fascinating stuff. The busiest man in.
Presented by Progressive Insurance on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and don't forget about us on ESPN2. So what if Giannis Antetokounmpo is not traded by the deadline on Thursday by the Milwaukee Bucks? Oh, they'll listen to counteroffers. There have been aggressive suitors wanting the services of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who has, and do the air quotes with me, a calf strain that could keep him out anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, and that could affect his trading value or where he's going to go. But, HD, I'll start with you, man. What if he's not traded by Thursday's deadline with all this going around? Then what becomes the biggest question for him in the Milwaukee Bucks?
Well, I think if that's the case, then Giannis needs to sit out the rest of the season. There's no reason to chance it, in my opinion, if you're Giannis Antetokounmpo and going out there, because, Freddie, we have the proof, right? The proof has been in the pudding. When guys are dealing with calf injuries and they come back too early or they try to force themselves to play on it, which I will hope will never be the case for Giannis, especially the caliber of player that he is, but it normally leads to tearing your Achilles. Now, I'm not saying I want that to happen to Giannis, but we also have a lot of examples to be able to see that has transpired after having calf injuries. This is the fourth one in the last 19 months. But I firmly believe if he's not traded, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks or Giannis, you have to sit him down for the rest of the season, because if you didn't trade him at the trade deadline, there's a great chance that you're probably going to plan on trading him this offseason, and you don't want to risk him getting injured further than what he is right now.
So they're 18 and 29 right now. They're 12th in the East. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. So if he's not traded at the deadline and they're not trying to start thinking about life beyond Giannis, you're in this weird purgatory state where you just kind of have to stand pat, because Harry's right. Like, if you play him, and like we know they're 1-9 in playoff games that he's played in. Health obviously is a big concern with him when it comes to late April into May into June, at least in recent years. I don't even think you're thinking about getting there, but either way, why would you play a player who very well could become more injured? And I know we kind of joke about the whole calf thing and the air quotes and, like, you know, he self-diagnosed it and all of that. But if the worst case scenario happens and he gets himself injured, you not only crush his trade value and the potential to move him for a haul that would allow you to build the next generation of your Milwaukee Bucks franchise, but that hurts him. For a team that's been trying to do right by him all of these years, when they try to bring pieces in to build around Giannis, even though it hasn't worked, you can't fault them for trying. I think that there would be a major stain on the organization for playing him, when the best thing to do would be to preserve him so he can go somewhere else in the offseason, so you can continue to have these talks, formally, informally, whatever fashion you have to do it in, but you can get the right trade package. Like, if you're Milwaukee, you have to not only do right by the superstar who brought you a championship and has been nothing but an upstanding member of your team and of the community. You have to think about your fan base. You have to think about, how do we make sure that Bucks fans have something to celebrate beyond Giannis's time here in Milwaukee? And that's by getting the best trade package possible for a player who will clearly net a big time deal that will then allow you to start building what's next for your franchise.
I just wonder how much leverage has been reduced regarding the Milwaukee Bucks because of everything you guys have said, where they had a chance to do this earlier, meaning last year in the summer or even before the trading deadline. But also that injury when it comes to Giannis Antetokounmpo. If anyone believes that he's even the slightest bit injured with a calf strain, and HD mentioned this on our radio show yesterday, his fourth kind of calf injury in the last year and a half, 2 years. And he's 31 years of age. As great as he is, that potential breakdown factor, especially the way he plays, is something you have to consider. And I wonder, gentlemen and lady, how much of that has reduced any kind of leverage in terms of what kind of haul that you are expecting to get back for a player that we know is still great, but that potential risk factor that he could break down sooner than later has to be right at the top of the mind of any kind of GM making this kind of deal, giving up your future for the now, and that now may break down, and then you have no future trying to win a championship.
So, Freddie, here's another thing that I think a lot of people need to realize about the Milwaukee Bucks and their 2026 first-round draft pick. They're probably rooting for the New Orleans Pelicans right now to have the worst record than they actually have, because the Hawks have two opportunities, right? If the Milwaukee Bucks have the worst record between the two, then the Atlanta Hawks will get their pick. But if the New Orleans Pelicans have the worst record between the two, the Hawks will get their pick. So, you know, Giannis not playing, it definitely has an effect on their 2026 draft pick. And they're just hoping right now the New Orleans Pelicans can continue to lose so the Hawks get their pick and not theirs.
Well, I think the benefit in waiting, because we've talked about, does it happen before Thursday? Do we have to wait to see what happens in June, July, after the NBA Finals? With the lottery, so the 2026 lottery happens in May, and once those picks are locked in, you know exactly who's going to be drafting where, and that only benefits you, if you're Milwaukee, to wait to make sure that you can get the best possible draft pick from a team that's going to be drafting in the top of the order to go get your next superstar, or at least be able to then, if you don't want to do it that way, then package those picks and move them for something else at a later time. But at least you have the draftable assets at your disposal. So I think it becomes a strategic game of trying to orchestrate this trade long before it eventually happens. That's the benefit of waiting. But one other question I want to ask, are we sure Giannis wants to play anymore?
Well, he wants to play, just
Like,
not there.
I get that
It's not
part,
there.
but like, let's say Thursday comes and goes, there's no trade, he's staying in Milwaukee for the next couple of months. We all think that, you know, the Bucks will say, okay, well, we need to protect him as an asset. We don't want him to play because we don't want him to get hurt. Do you think he wants to play? This whole self-diagnosed calf strain, as much as we can like poke holes in it and be like, oh yeah, it'd be funny if he goes somewhere else and is fine immediately. Maybe it wasn't as serious as we thought it would be. But you brought up the game, and I believe it was Minnesota, when he starts booing the crowd back, or the game against Minnesota where he starts booing the crowd back that's booing him. Doesn't seem like he's in a great basketball place right now. The team's 12th in the East. It doesn't feel like when he's out there, he's having nearly as much of an impact as he did in previous years. And maybe it's what's the pieces that are around him. Maybe it's the fit between him and Miles Turner. I actually thought it was a good one for a while. But something for me tells me that it's not just the health part that he needs to be sitting out for the next couple of months until he gets ready for this trade.
I'll say for a guy like Giannis, especially who has tasted success on a massive level in just about every way you can actually think of, you know, mediocrity doesn't like to be around other mediocrity. And right now, that's the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's why you see the frustration the way you see it probably with Giannis and booing the crowd back, because he understands the standard. And I get it that, you know, a lot of personnel that's there right now, they weren't there when they won that NBA championship, but Giannis was. And he's the elite player. He's the superstar, megastar. He's the one that's going to sell the tickets in his box office. But I do know, because of Giannis and having that feeling of winning an NBA championship, it's like Pookie in New Jack City. Oh, Scotty is calling me, man. It's calling my name, Scotty. Like, it's calling his name again to get back to the heights, the highest of the highs in your respective sport. So I think that's what still drives Giannis. I think he understands now that that's not going to happen again in Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's why it was so strange, and I know why he said it, not Giannis, but it was so strange on Sunday before the Bucks played the Boston Celtics that Doc Rivers answered the question, for me, I think that he's going to be here by the end of the year. He's going to finish this year with the Milwaukee Bucks. When he said about Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm thinking, why would you put that out there when you know for a damn sure that he's not going to be there? And you know your organization is trying to trade him. I don't know what Doc Rivers was thinking, maybe trying to put that out into the ether that if Giannis hears that, he's going to have that loyalty to Doc Rivers. Giannis, for the first time in his career, is going to be loyal to Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's shown his loyalty to the Milwaukee Bucks and to that organization and to that city. That's why I thought it was really strange that Doc Rivers put that out there, that he felt 100% certain that Giannis was going to play again this season and play again for the Milwaukee Bucks. That made no sense to me.
Who's the only guy on the roster right now that was there when they won? Was Bobby Portis was there?
Bobby Portis was there.
So think about how lonely of a place that is, right? When you win an NBA championship and only one person is on that roster that won that championship with you, and all your amigos, man, they're gone other places now. Now, you look at a guy like Drew Holiday, who was able to, leave Milwaukee and go win an NBA championship with the Boston Celtics. He's had that taste again in his mouth. Giannis wants that same taste. He wants that vanilla ice cream or that chocolate ice cream, strawberry, or if you want to mix all three together, he wants that ice cream again. Right now, these early exits in the playoffs and being 12th seed in the Eastern Conference, I will crash out too when I'm used to greatness if I'm Giannis.
Once you said ice cream, I didn't hear anything else. Now you made me hungry at 7:42 in the morning. Once I heard that, I became hungry all over again. He is Harry Douglas with Courtney Cronin and me, Freddie Coleman. In for Evan Cohen, Chris Candy, Michelle Smallman. Thanks for joining us on the Sportsmanlike, presented by Progressive Insurance. So we could have Giannis Antetokounmpo traded by Thursday. We could have James Harden on his way out of Los Angeles Clippers. Talks could be involved with him and the Cleveland Cavaliers when he goes there, and also the Darius Garland. If you're over that kind of overarching narrative regarding the NBA trading deadline, then I guarantee you Pat Costello knows exactly how you feel. What is he over with? We're going to find out all together next on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and don't forget about us on ESPN2.
Hey, this is Rich Eisen.